Andy Moorhead is not only a veterinarian, but a specialist in parasitology. And Andy, what is your actual credentials? You are Andy Moorhead, comma DVM, comma what else?
Sorry, I have to chuckle at that. Jeff, I've often said those who can't function in the real world go on to get more degrees to validate their their life. So what I did after vet school, I actually did a lab animal residency for 2 years, but decided not to pursue that because if you have problems following rules, you certainly can't enforce them. During vet school, I don't know if you remember this, and this is actually important to the credentialing part. I developed a strong interest in public health, but over various research things before school, before vet school at CDC, and then later during vet school, I went and did some summer research. It always came back to parasites. And so I got the chance after lab animal to go do a master's in parasitology at Purdue, working on the zoonotic roundworm Baileys ascaris procyon. After that, I was going to go back to Cornell, which I did, to work on trichinella with someone I'd worked with previously. There was a hitch in funding, so I ended up working on chlamydia, which I don't know if you ever knew that, and did cellular microbiology. At the same, and so I'd get my PhD there. I would then go to Georgia, and a very important part of this story is my wife, whom you of course know, is a veterinary pathologist, and we've been lucky to do our training simultaneously and end up at the same place, which is actually very rare. So we got a chance to go back to Georgia. She got me my job, and that's when I was able to get back into parasitology and doing the work that I do with heartworm now. And during that time, I was able to get boarded. Parasitology is a boarded subspecialty now, the American College of Veterinary Microbiology. I took the test, I passed, and have been a boarded parasitologist in 2015. Although I've been out of the diagnostic lab so long, it's questionable how much I remember, but I do have those boards. So, MS, PhD, diplomate of the ACVM, and my wife has told me no more degrees.
My wife was afraid I was going to go to additional degrees, and I think if I had taken up I don't know if you know this, I got accepted for an internship at Georgia, and
I remember that.
I made the phone call to her. You know, Dr. Keene, the cardiologist, kind of pushed me into that. He thought I should go into cardiology. He never knew I really would have probably done ophthalmology if I had to choose. But I gave that phone call to her, and it was obvious in her voice. She was like, "Great for you, and we will be." So I declined that, and I think my kids are probably glad I did, or they would either not be here or be very different.
It, Kaori and I are that rare couple that we were very, very lucky to be able to train together, or not train together, but train at the same places and be employed at the same place. And without that, I don't know where we would be. So
Yeah, the long
thank you.
distance thing's hard, you know,
I think you and I both agree family always comes first. So
most days.
most days, most days.
So we both grew up in North Carolina, and one thing that is kind of unique is that I ended up in your hometown as a veterinarian, I think, right?
So yes, actually, I grew up in Lenore, which is on the mountain or on the way going up to the mountains of Lone Rock and Boone, and you would not stop there. You would only go through there. So for anyone who knows that area, we would go to Hickory and Morganton for fun, and people are like, "Wow, those places were your fun places," and we're like, "Yes." But my father's job moved him to Concord 1980, no, sorry, 1991, I believe. And that's where we ended up and where my family was based for a long time. And then, yes, you worked there. And then, of course, eh, you and Mo opened a practice and will become my mother's veterinarians. And she still swears by y'all as veterinarians. It's the
She
best vet
was she
she's ever
was
had.
like the most famous client in our practice, and that really even without you being a classmate, she won everyone over, like, in an instant. So, she was
And and
she
and
she was all personality, and Clancy definitely won everyone over quickly too.
yes, Clancy was, one in a million, and my mother always says, "See, everyone thinks I'm sweet," to which I sort of just raise my eyebrows at.
We all know the family members who are different to their family than they are to everyone around. I've seen it for sure.
I know you
Did
have.
you ever think like, I knew when I was supposedly 5 years old, I was supposed to be an animal doctor, like, in the exam room. That was my prototype of a veterinarian was seeing the pet. I knew it was gonna be dogs, cats, had no interest in the exotic world. Um, did you ever think that was gonna be your path, or were you always drawn to the bugs?
No, I was definitely not drawn to the bugs. Initially, when I was 5, I was gonna be a plumber, which if I had stayed on that path, perhaps that would have been a wiser choice. Then I was gonna be a forest ranger. Eventually, I would settle into a veterinarian, want to be a veterinarian in high school. So I was late to the game compared to a lot of people. And the way I ended up with parasites was it started with me saying things like, I will never work with worms again. I will never work with guts again because let's just say I ended up with some research projects that even for a veterinarian, you have to have a strong stomach. I can run and get worms out of guts pretty well. And I said, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do this. But it kept pulling me back in. And it was primarily intestinal worms. But then when I got to Georgia, which at the time was a heartworm, uh, the place to be, I definitely decided that that was the bug that I wanted to work on and have loved it ever since. Although I'm definitely now getting pulled back into resistant hookworm cases, not because I want to, but because I have to.
Yes, they're there, yes. So,
Yes.
you may not know this, but my wife, who is also a veterinarian, she was multiple years ahead of me, and she elected to do as her epidemiology project a swine parasite project. And you know you love somebody when you go with them. No credit from me, nothing. Just going in these nasty, smelly places and collecting feces from awful swine houses to help her with that project. I would not do it now, but back then, young and things that you will do in that age group.
I would help her now, and now the next time I see her, realize I want to derail this whole conversation and ask her a bunch of questions, but that's for a different time.
Yeah, oh, it was gnarly stuff. So what now I notice that you train veterinarians, and what is the coolest part of that?
So I like to think I hope I train them. Let me put it that way. I definitely dispense information. Hopefully, it's received and learned. The coolest part of that is the student for the student population is that it definitely gives me hope. There's, certainly in talking to older veterinarians, there can be some generational frustration. And but with a lot of the students that I teach, I'm like, they're good. They're going to make good veterinarians. Not that I'm not frustrated, but I would say I like teaching most of the students most of the time. And so getting to know them as people, know that they're going to contribute to the profession, and hoping that you maybe had just some small part in that is great. The other part of it is I also feel hopefully that I'm training them appropriately about small animal parasitology, especially heartworms, so that they can go out and make sure that their clients' pets are protected. And then the reason I really like giving CE is at least once during every CE I've ever given, someone will ask me a question I haven't thought of. I'll be like, huh, I'll think about it, and they'll give me a fact I didn't know. Jeff, you know I'm not a practitioner. You would never bring your animal to me unless you needed an opinion on a parasite. And so to be talking to people who are actually practicing all the stuff that I preach and to learn something that I didn't know, to gain that knowledge is why I love actually doing CEs.
Oh, that's very cool. Now you're being a little bit humble because I have heard and seen many awards where students really, really like
Hmm.
your classes and going to your class, and you have won student awards for multiple for best, I don't know what the term is, instructor, professor, or whatnot. So you're doing something that's keeping their attention, which, if you remember back in our days, sitting in parasitology class was not the easiest. Certainly, Don Mutant could do it with some
Fear,
pathology things
fear. I will
and
say
fear that you would
fear.
get
I will
called
publicly
called
say
upon.
fear.
Fair. That there was a lot of fear that you would be called out in that class. But he would also bring that past animal's tissue to a live animal for those of us that could see ourselves in an exam room. He could make it relate. It's harder to do that. So when I see, and they also have a lot of fun. Have seen on your Facebook, well, maybe Kaori's Facebook, multiple images of right around this time of year, Halloween, where you have a known look that I've heard you say that you had the look before Walter White with Breaking Bad, but
I
he's
did.
more famous, so he gets credit for it. So a lot of the students either put Walter White, but most of them put that they're Dr. Moorhead, right? When they put the look.
They do. There's it's plaid shirt, khaki, brown pants, coffee cup, and there's always been a question on any given time of the day, what is in the coffee cup? That's for me to know.
You haven't had the Irish coffee. Well, you couldn't let anyone know anyway, or your job may be at risk.
Officially, I never would have done that because that would be inappropriate, and we all know that I follow rules. And to be an
Always,
Irish
always.
coffee, you'd have to have coffee in it. Sometimes you just forget the coffee.
Exactly, exactly. So from when we were in school and sitting in those classrooms, I know a lot of things have changed. Is there anything that I would be, or people in our that were in our classroom would be surprised about the way that you utilize like a classroom? I know at NC State the last time I was there, they had some hybrid stuff where you could watch your instructor from home, and I was a little torn as to how do you feel about that? Is that good? Is that bad?
So, and in this, I think this may definitely warrant some follow-up questions on another session, but the use of technology. I was actually explaining it to students. Remember the day we had the notebooks, and basically if you wanted to write something or talk about something different, you wrote on that one blank page on the back or drew the drawings. I was telling a particular story yesterday to another faculty member about how one of our classmates had asked a particularly humorous question in class that stopped a professor cold. I won't go into details, but I'm pretty sure you remember what I'm talking about and
I
how
I
you'd have to
I think I
doodle.
recall. I think I recall. Yes,
I'll tell you later if you don't. If I
I think I
go
do.
if I go into too much more descriptions, it would, give it away. But with that being said, we had that paper, we had to take notes. Now with technology, and I've seen this myself in webinars, I find it much easier to disengage with the content. It's all there on the PowerPoint. Um, you students can be if we needed to study for another test, we had to leave class to do it. You had to skip the class to study for the test. You may have not done this. I did this on multiple occasions.
We did this on
Now,
multiple occasions.
so
Everyone did this in our
it's
age group.
not every, there were a few well-behaved people, but now they're in
90%. I would say
90%.
90%.
Now they're in the class, they're doing something else. So much so that I will actively say, I'll be like, listen, I need you all to stop online shopping, adjusting your fantasy football lineup or whatever you're doing. Because what I am telling you right now is important, not just for the test you're going to take, but for life. And if you screw it up, it could be very, very bad. And when you say that, most of them will pay attention, and normally it's something like, do not give melarsoline to a cat. Are you paying attention? Just don't ever do that.
Do you
So
run the risk that if you say that, then they only listen when you say that?
that's you. So, but I think it's also forced us to be more engaging as teachers. What I tell the students when they're thinking about talking to clients, I'm like, think about when we talk to you in class, we have about 10 to 15 minutes maybe that you're paying attention. I said, so don't think that you are so good that you can talk to a client for 10 minutes straight about multiple topics without checking in or without having some visual and holding your attention. You're not that good. And it really reinforces them to them from their own experience of paying attention in class that you have finite time. So the biggest thing is the use of technology. I think that there's definitely sometimes by some people it's called edutainment. I think that I prefer to not think of it as trying to entertain, but try to be engaging. And I think that's the most important point. You will not resonate with every student. That's something you need to uh, accept. Unless you're the nicest person on the planet. My favorite eval I ever got, Jeff, was watch the sarcasm. Literally, this was a comment on things I could improve on, to, of course, which I want to imply. It wasn't my day to watch it, so you watch it. But anyway, there's
I don't think you could be you without some
no,
sarcasm.
no,
I mean,
I
there's
current,
certain things you can't get out of someone,
but
you know?
I I think you have to try to engage them. You definitely be open for questions. Yeah, I think there's some simple things. You can't be defensive when they ask you questions, or if they think you're being defensive, you're like, no, this is literally the way it is. I have no power over this. And just being yourself. Well, let me put it this way. Lots of times they will see through the bullshit of instructors. There are those instructors that fool the students. Everyone likes the students, and they're just absolutely horrible to work with as a peer. But I do think being yourself, also realizing you are not, for me, I'm not educating parasitologists, Jeff.
That was one
I
of my questions. Are most of the people that are in your classroom, are they still a huge percentage that are going into small
general
animal,
prac
wanna be in the
general
general practice
practice
exam
and
rooms?
I will end on this, and I apologize. I have to cut time short today. I do
Yeah, I
want to
do have one
continue.
question you have to answer before you leave, though.
Okay, so what I tell people is where I will scold students is when they say, "I just want to be a general practitioner," and I say, "Never say that to me again." because without general practitioners, people like me would not exist. So, and I have, with my profession, I am lucky. Every student comes in wants to be a surgeon or a zoo vet. It's one of those two choices.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong. No one wants to be a parasitologist. So, so I'm actually lucky in that I don't have to worry about educating that one student on minutia that no one else would care about. I can concentrate on educating the generalist as they go out and educate clients. And I view it actually as a benefit versus a detriment.
Okay.
Yes, one more
Two
question,
two
sir.
quick ones. One is for the Toastmasters groups that are not veterinarians, pet parents. What's the one thing that they should know about their pets with parasites right now? Is it still don't let them get heartworms, give them monthly?
Yeah, so give monthly or another longer acting preventive that can be administered by your veterinarian, but year-round consistent parasite protection is the best way to prevent your pet from these risks. And that is my consistent message throughout my career.
Last question is you have been a Georgia Bulldog. You've howled with the Wolves at NC State. Where is the allegiance now in the sports world?
The allegiance in the sports world always will
Pittsburgh
be to the
Steelers.
wolf pack.
Okay.
I will say, having come back and been in the stadium a few weeks ago for the Virginia Tech game,
Oh, my brother was there. It was awful.
I love the wolf pack. It was easier to walk into the Bulldog Stadium on a Saturday because you were more assured of an outcome.
Yeah, well, I've been pulling a lot more for Clemson and Florida, and both those teams this year have been. So I was like, well, maybe State still
No,
no
except
good.
this past weekend, y'all beat
Uh,
Florida beat Texas, but we could talk about that.
okay,
Jeff, always a
you got to go.
pleasure. Okay,
All
see you,
right.
my friend.
Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Good to see you, Dr. Andy.
Okay, see you soon, Dr. Munn. Bye.